Hello and welcome to this lecture. And in this lecture, we will go ahead and learn about CSS font style, type, and size. So until now, we have actually created our website with the default font, which means that we have not set the font of the heading or anything like that by using some CSS styling or something like that. But instead, we have used the default font, whatever we got while creating a basic simple HTML page. Now, in some cases, obviously, we might need to go ahead and tweak the font a little bit to suit the theme of any website which we are developing. So for example, let's say if you are building some website for kids, then you might want to use some different font rather than using a formal font. So for example, you can use some comic book kind of a font. And on the contrary, if you are developing some professional web applications, then you might want to use a readable professional font. So what I mean to say is that you actually need to go ahead and use different kinds of fonts for different purposes. So we need to learn how exactly can we change the font style of the font which we are using on our website. So in order to change font of our website, what we have to do is that we have to use a CSS property which is called as font family. So let's say, for example, if you want to change the font of this particular heading, so in that case you can simply go ahead, go into the CSS file, and in here simply use the h tag and set the font family attribute or font family CSS property for that particular heading, and then you need to add the font which you want to use. Now there are actually multiple fonts which you can use, but in order to choose a font, first of all you need to know the font names. So there are actually multiple fonts which are available. So now if you go to Google and if you search for CSS font family list, the first link is going to be from W3 Schools, so you can simply click on that, and here you're actually going to get a bunch of font families which you can use on your website. So as you can see, these are the different font families which we can use over here. So let's say, for example, you want to use some different sort of font. So let's say if you want to use this particular font for your website. So what you can do here is that you can simply copy the font family, which is this family right here. So I'll just go ahead, copy that. Then we will move back over here, and as we actually want to change the font of our heading, I can simply go ahead, type in H1, and now let's use the font family property over here. So that's going to be font family, and I'll just paste the property over here and the statement with the semicolon, and you're good to go. So now if I go back and hit refresh, as you can see, now our heading actually has a different font family. And now you can also go ahead and set the style of this particular font as well. So for example, you can actually go ahead and set the style of this particular font to italic. So for example, I can just go ahead and use the font style property, which is also a CSS property like font family, but this is actually to set up the style of the font which we are using. So let's say if you want to make the font slightly slanting, so you can use font style, and I can set it to italic. So if you go back and hit refresh, as you can see, now our heading is actually having a style italic. Now once we know about the font family and once we know about the font style, let's talk about the font size. So font size is actually measured in terms of pixels. So let's say, for example, if we set the font size of this thing to let's say 50 pixels, so we use a property which is font size and simply type in 50 pixels over here. And if we save the code, and now if we save the code, go back over here, hit refresh, as you can see, the size actually changed to 50 pixels. Now if you want to make it 100 pixels, you can simply go ahead, replace that, and when you go back, your heading will be even bigger. Now this is how you set the font size. So this is actually quite simple, but the main issue with setting up the font size using pixels is that your website is actually going to be accessed by different users who are going to have different types of screens. So for example, someone might actually have a very high density pixel screen. So for example, if on some device 50 pixels is this much, and for other device with a higher pixel density, the font size of 50 pixels is going to appear much smaller. So how exactly are you going to make sure that your font is going to look consistent throughout? So in order to go ahead and tackle that problem, we use something which is called as EMs. So unlike pixels, EMs are actually a scalable unit. So now let's learn how exactly EMs actually work. So let me just open up a calculator here and I'll show you guys how exactly EMs or the unit EM actually works. So the way in which EM actually works is that, let's say if the font size of the document is 16 pixels. So let's say the standard font size of any document is 16 pixels. So that means 1 EM is going to be equal to 16 pixels. So for example, if you want to set the font size of any heading, or let's say any element for that matter, to 50 pixels, then what you simply have to do is that you have to type in 50 divided by 16, which means now we actually need 3.12 EMs or 3.1 EMs. So if you have the size as 3.1 EMs, that means that is going to be 3.1 multiplied by 16, which is equal to 49.6 pixels. So that's how you can go ahead and sort of calculate the conversion from pixels to EMs. So now let's say we go ahead and change the font size of this thing to, let's say, 2.2 EMs. So I can go ahead, save that. And now if we go back over here and hit refresh, as you can see, the font size is now 2.2 EMs. Now if we go back and change this thing to, let's say, 4.2 EMs, save the code, go back over here, and when I hit refresh, as you can see, the size now increases. So that's how you can actually go ahead and set font size of the text using CSS by using the font size property. So that's it for this lecture. Hopefully you guys were able to understand how to set the font family and size of the elements on your web page. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.